Welcome everyone to the Q&A session for our upcoming course, the Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution Intensive, the 6-month journey to harness the power of herbs for health, aging, intimacy, and spiritual awakening. I'm Lisa Bunnies, and I'm always happy to host a Q&A discussion for the Shift Network with David Crow. This time, we'll address questions about his upcoming 6-month course, the Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution Intensive, which begins Thursday, November 9th. Later, I'll explain how you can participate in this course, even if you can't attend the live sessions. But first, I want to introduce our guest. David Crow is one of the world's foremost experts and leading speakers in the field of botanical medicine and grassroots healthcare. He's a master herbalist, aromatherapist, and acupuncturist with over 30 years of experience, and he's an expert in the Ayurvedic and Chinese medical systems. David is a renowned author and is the founding director of Floricopia Aromatic Treasures. David travels and teaches throughout the world, and throughout his visionary synthesis of medicine, ecology, and spirituality, he's helped transform the lives of thousands. And in just a few minutes, we're going to open up for your questions for David. But first, I want to welcome David to the call, and he's going to start us off with some helpful hints about using plant medicine for pain and inflammation. Welcome, David. It is always so cool to talk to you.
Thanks, Lisa. It's always so nice to be here. So we have a important subject to discuss, and of course, this is trying to pack many years of information into about 10 minutes about how to use herbs for pain and inflammation. And I think the starting point would be to ask a simple question, and that is, how effective are herbs for pain and inflammation? That's probably what is on a lot of people's minds. I was looking over the questions that have come in, and there are certainly a lot of things that I can share about some of the important herbs that will address a lot of the questions, because people have submitted many questions related to pain and inflammation and what to do about it. So this will be the first overview of some of the important herbs that we use for treating pain and inflammation and how effective they might be, and also to put them into a proper context, because people frequently think in very allopathic terms when it comes to herbal medicine. And what I mean by that is that they think this herb should do that, and therefore, what is the best herb for this type of pain, or what is the best herb for pain in general? And really, herbs don't work that way. There are some examples where we can go through different systems. And this is the first round of information that I wanted to give you, because there are definitely herbs that will do something almost every time for some types of pain. But the primary question is, are herbs really enough for more advanced illnesses with more intensive pain and inflammation? So the simple starting point is, how effective are herbs for pain? And that obviously will depend on the type of pain, the severity, the nature of the condition. So we really have to think very holistically, what is happening with the individual. Now, what I can say is that many types of herbs are highly effective for simple types of pain. For example, a cup of chamomile tea will almost always completely and rapidly and effectively reduce the pain of intestinal spasms from indigestion. That's a good example of something that herbal medicine is renowned for. It's a very simple level, and there's actually many herbs that will work for immediate pain relief and anti-inflammatory powers for simple things. And this is one of the reasons why we should have a home pharmacy, is because we don't need to run to stronger things if it's relatively uncomplicated. Now, as things become more complicated, and there's many questions in this session here to look at that are examples of this, we need to start thinking more holistically. Several questions came in, for example, about fibromyalgia. There are people asking about muscle wasting conditions. There's a lot of people asking about endocrine disturbances. There's a lot of more serious kinds of conditions. And the frequent question that comes is, what herb treats this extremely complicated chronic condition? Well, it's not really like that. And so to start, I just want to say that herbal medicine, if used in conjunction with other integrated therapies, and the program is individualized, and it's really addressing the deeper root causes, that this form of medicine can be highly effective. Now, the one thing that I can definitely say about herbal medicine, pain relief, and anti-inflammatory powers is that it will not slow down the healing process for the most part. There are a few really strong herbs that I will mention that may be a little bit heavy on the system, but they are certainly going to cause less side effects than almost all the prescription pain medications, over the counter pain medications, over the counter anti inflammatories, and so forth. So, the one thing that we can see is an advantage is that herbal medicine will not create long term complications. Even relatively simple pain medications have serious adverse reactions. They'll burn a hole in your stomach, cause gastritis. They have liver toxicity. They will cause kidney damage over time. They're neurotoxic. They use up the neurotransmitters. They've been linked to increase of dementia. I mean, there's many, many problems from stronger and even milder over-the-counter pain medications and anti-inflammatories. Now, herbal medicines won't do that. Herbal medicines will actually support the healing process. Now, what they won't do in many cases is they won't give that strong pain relief, but they will work more holistically. And that's what you really, the most important thing to take away from this little talk here is that if you can use integrated therapies, and by integrated therapies, I mean a combination of nutrition, healthy diet, relaxation, meditation, massage, acupuncture, some qigong, some movement, along with these herbs, the effectiveness of herbal medicine will be greatly enhanced. And this is the way to think about this rather than to think, what is the specific herb for this more serious type of pain? There's a few examples, but for the most part, we really have to think very holistically. Now, I'm just going to give you an overview of one of the sections in the course that we are going to be delving into. And there are two modules dedicated to the treatment of pain and inflammation. And it's based on an organization of herbs according to different classifications by organ system. And this is very important. It's a very simple way to understand things. So many people were asking, what are different herbs for different kinds of pain? And this is the first answer. If pain and inflammation, I'll break it down actually. Let me start with the anti-inflammatory herbs. And they do cross over, of course, because pain and inflammation are closely related, and so are the treatments in herbal medicine. But we can start with a group of herbs that would be digestive anti-inflammatories. And several people are asking about digestive anti-inflammatory herbs. Your major list of herbs, for those of you who have inflammatory conditions in the digestive tract, you would like to think about chamomile tea. That's number one. It's really simple. But another one that people don't think of is the wild yam. People think of wild yam as more of a endocrine regulating type of plant, but it doesn't really do that so much. It's really an antispasmodic and anti-inflammatory for digestive symptoms. Licorice is an excellent anti-inflammatory for digestive inflammation of all types. And in some cases, you would think of some of the really strong bitter antimicrobials like golden seal. And then also mints are very nice. So a simple starting point for digestive inflammation, mint and chamomile tea. And then we also think about the demulcent herbs, and that would be things like slippery elm and marshmallow, and also the licorice is very demulcent. Now, looking at the musculoskeletal system, we're talking about things that are mostly taken in tincture form. They're more concentrated. And those would be things like the white willow bark is a famous North American herb. And again, something people may not think about, which is the wild yam, is actually very anti-inflammatory for muscles and joints. So several of you are expressing concerns about musculoskeletal pain. You might want to think about that. The number one herb for inflammation in the nervous system, and that would be any type of pinched nerve situation that might be getting inflamed or something like post-herpetic pain, shingles outbreaks. The number one herb is going to be St. John's wort. Now, some people may immediately think, well, there's herb drug interaction concerns, especially with antidepressant and anxiolytic prescription medications. And that's true, but it's not as serious or acute as a lot of people think it is. Many times it's a theoretical concern, but this is something, if you are on those medications, you should not just go taking large doses of St. John's wort without understanding the nature of the herb. And that is one of the major things that we cover in the course also. There's over 100 monographs of individual herbs that will be given. And in those monographs, there's a section on warnings and contraindications, possible herb drug interactions, and so forth. But if you're not on those medications, St. John's wort is a really good anti-inflammatory for the nervous system. And then we also have anti-inflammatories for the urinary system. And my favorite to suggest to people is, because it's very mild and also very demulcent, is corn silk, just as a tincture to add to some water and drink it. And then many people know about some of the general anti-inflammatories because now they are widely talked about on the internet. Many people have met them through the health food store, their natural practitioner. They might be working with a naturopath or an acupuncturist. And of course, the number one anti-inflammatory that everybody knows about now is turmeric. Ginger is something that's a little bit counterintuitive because it tastes so hot, and yet it is a major anti-inflammatory. And then another one that people don't know about, and this crosses over for people who are asking about some of the decline of cognitive function from a number of different conditions. Gotu kola is a really important herb that is both anti-inflammatory systemically for the whole body, but it's also an excellent herb for supporting cognitive function. Now, we also have a long list here of the antispasmodic herbs, and many of these cross over. But since our time is short and there were so many questions to address here, I'm just going to skip to the next section, which is primary analgesic herbs. And this will open up a bigger topic because many people are asking, what do I think about medical cannabis and what about CBD? And so this would be the place where I can address some of that. In the group of herbs that we would call primary analgesic herbs, we find things like the tincture of the California poppy. Now, the California poppy is somewhat of a distant cousin from the poppy that gives morphine, which, of course, is one of the strongest pain-killing agents that we have in the world, and, of course, extremely problematic. Another herb that is very nice overall, and this is very helpful for many types of pain, and that is kava kava. Now, kava kava comes from the South Pacific. It's part of the traditional culture. It can be very strong as an intoxicant, but it can also be very helpful taken at smaller doses for relaxing the musculoskeletal system. Actually, kava is an excellent choice for those of you who sent in questions concerning fibromyalgia. It's one of the main herbs that can be very good, and you don't have to drink it every single day in the coconut shell in the prepared form. You can just take a few drops of the tincture, and it can have a really significant pain relieving type of effect. So kava is another good one. Kava also has some herb drug interaction considerations. And the main thing is just to use common sense that anything that you're taking that might be euphoric, narcotic, intoxicating, like kava is used for in the traditional ceremonies, deep relaxation, euphoria, somewhat narcotic kind of feeling. Anything that does that will have some concerns about health on the liver. It's a bit hard on the liver, and you can get a real hangover from it if you go to a kava party, for example. You can feel like you've consumed a huge amount of alcohol the next day. So anything like that will be contraindicated with alcohol, of course. It's fairly common sense. Another really good overall herb for pain will be externally the essential oils of wintergreen and birch. And those of you who have been in the advanced aromatherapy course know that these are very, very good, but these are also toxic essential oils. And so we need to have very low concentration, high dilution in external forms and not use them very much. But that's another way that people can get a lot of benefit for musculoskeletal pain is consider how to use herbs externally. And that can be poultices, it can be herbal baths, and it can be aromatherapy, use of essential oils topically. So these are many tools that we have for treating pain. Don't just think in terms of taking turmeric pill and that's going to be the end of the story. Think of using many herbs to treat the pain and many herbs to support the internal systems as well. Another very important herb that people have heard about is going to be the black cohosh. And this is something that is very good for fibromyalgia. Again, actually, people think of black cohosh as like the menopause herb. Well, it's got a lot more functions than that. It is a uterine antispasmodic, but it is also a antispasmodic for the musculoskeletal system. And so that's very good for fibromyalgia. And then another one that's now increasingly well known comes to us from Ayurveda, which is the ashwagandha. And the ashwagandha is a very interesting herb because it's actually a relaxant to the nervous system, but it strengthens the muscles. And some people had some questions where we see this kind of dual function of problems in the nervous system and problems in the musculoskeletal system. And this is always a really good herb to consider for that type of thing. It's very relaxing. It helps people get good sleep. Its Latin name is Withania somnifera, indicating that it gives good sleep. It's somewhat of a tranquilizing agent, a hypnotic agent, actually, for the nervous system. And of course, that helps with pain relief as well. But ashwagandha also strengthens the muscles. And ashwagandha would be another major herb for those of you asking about fibromyalgia. So we've covered quite a bit right there. And I think, Lisa, that would probably be a good time to transition back and start taking a look at some of these specific questions. There's a list that I've introduced. And now we can go ahead and delve into some of the questions specifically about the nature of the course, what people are getting and not getting, some crossover questions about, have I taken this course before? Things like that. That's always an important place to start so people know what the course really is. So I'll just turn it back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, David. So much information there. I hope everyone was taking notes, or better yet, plans to take the course. We have the rest of our time together to dive into your questions for David as we prepare for the course. Again, that's called Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution Intensive, and it begins Thursday, November 9th. And if you want to check out the website and learn more about the 6-month course, you can visit plantsandevolutionintensive.com. There it is at the bottom of your screen. You can see the full description. So let's go ahead and get started. If you have a question for David, just go ahead and type them in and I'll be happy to read them out loud. And as David mentioned, we do have some questions waiting, and let's go with the first one here. This is not the first time that you've taught this specific course. You did teach it last year, and people are wondering, is this the same course that you taught last year? It's got the same name.
Yes, it is the same course. And actually, there was a little bit of confusion for some people because we had an intro call with Stephen that was introducing it, and that call was titled How Medicinal Plants Can Protect and Enhance Your Mind, where we focused really on the cognitive aspects of the herbs, cognitive supporting aspects. And some people got the impression that that was actually the name of the course. And is this a new course? So to clarify, this is the same course that we ran for 6 months, 18 modules, titled Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution. And this is the same one we did 1 year ago. So those of you who took that course, I'd just like to say thank you for being in that course. And you know that there was a huge amount of information. I imagine that most of you are probably still reading those files and hopefully building your home pharmacy a step at a time. So yes, that is the course.
Okay, terrific. Then the next most popular question, most FAQ, is will there be a certificate offered at the end of the course?
Right. The Shift Network gives a letter of completion, and this can possibly serve as a certificate that may be beneficial according to whatever organization that you are submitting it to, if that's what you need it for CEU hours. However, there is no certification per se like we see with a full herbal program of several years or 500 hours through aromatherapy training or something like that. That's the simple answer.
Okay, great. Thank you. You mentioned CBD oil briefly in your beginning introduction, and we do have a question here specifically about that. This is anonymous, no name. The question is, what do you think about CBD oil? I always thought it was illegal until I found this company who's compliant and even shows its chemistry readings. I would love your opinion.
Yeah, it's a big subject about pain and inflammation and the power of herbs. Actually, one more question here before we move to that. There was a specific question if this course requires any mandatory assignments or not, because somebody has an extremely busy schedule. There are no mandatory assignments. You don't have to take any tests. There's nothing like that. But there is a lot of information. This course is very much do at your own speed. That's why we have the audio files, the recordings that are posted if you miss a class. That's one of the things that several people have commented on actually in some of the questions. They really appreciate that they can just tune into the class basically anytime during the week or even months later. The audio files are there for downloading at your convenience, and the transcripts are there also. And no, this is not going to add stress to your life. It's not going to give you any kind of academic test anxiety. So I hope that clarifies that. Yes, now let's talk about cannabis. Well, there are two main forms of cannabis, and I'm sure there are probably many people listening or watching us here who probably have a whole lot more experience with this than I do. My understanding and training at this point is purely academic and intellectual, although I have sampled several of the CBD products simply for research purposes to see how they felt. I am not in any phase of life right now where consuming the THC products would agree with me, actually. I would certainly consider using them if I had a serious condition that required them. But fortunately, I am in good health and using herbs to maintain my health. And so I don't need to use them. But I was curious because so many people are asking about the CBD. And yes, you are correct. It is legal in the United States and all 50 states, easily accessible through the internet. And one of the most common questions I get is it effective? Does it work? And there are so many products, which one should I use? Well, what we know, let's break this down a little bit because this is part of our discussion. What we know is that there are many cannabinoid compounds, and only two of them have been researched in any uh, detail, and that is the THC, which is the one that creates intoxication, gets you stoned, and the CBD, which has significant anti-inflammatory and anxiolytic powers, but doesn't get you stoned. As a matter of fact, they use CBD now in emergency rooms for helping to counteract the anxiety and panic attacks that have been significantly increased since cannabis has been legalized in many states. With the legalization of the extremely concentrated potent hybrids and the extremely potent extracts that are being used, many people are overdosing frequently without knowing that they're taking too much at the beginning. Let's look at both of these forms of cannabis in a little bit more detail. Now, CBD will not intoxicate you, but it will have some very potentially beneficial effects. And those effects, I think, are fairly well known now. But for those of you who may be just tuning into this medical social development for the first time, CBD can be taken internally in various forms and various concentrations. It's extracted from the hemp plant. It has no THC. It won't get you high, but it will have very relaxing effects for most people. What I'm hearing, testimonials, this is what a lot of what I go by is what people tell me directly about how it works. And since over the last couple of years, there's been thousands and thousands of people in these courses, then I've heard quite a lot actually. And people tell me quite often that it really does help them get better sleep. And it really does help improve their overall mood and sense of well being, especially with depression and anxiety. Now, I'm not going to say that this is good for everybody, but there's enough evidence coming out now that we can certainly consider this a major herb. This is probably one of the most important herbs in general. As a matter of fact, what we have now is a complete pharmacy of products from one herb, and one herb in so many different forms. Now, CBD can also be very effective for a number of other conditions, but the primary things, again, anxiety, depression, nervousness, tension, insomnia, and various types of pain. So I do recommend that you can try it. Now, I don't know enough to actually endorse any particular company, but what I can say is that there are so many companies coming now that it's actually a fairly enjoyable kind of research project. If you want to look at all the different players that are out there, you'll find there's some pretty interesting characters who are cultivating and manufacturing this stuff. And they have some nice stories. And there's really no way to tell about the product unless you sample it. Now, the CBD can come from, there's a variety of forms, anything from relatively mild dilution in a carrier oil that you might take, to strong concentration in capsules, to extremely concentrated forms that you need very little. The instructions are always going to come with it. Now, the information that I can share from my own personal experience to watch for is I found that if I took CBD more than a few times in a row, that it started to overheat my stomach. I just noticed that it's heavy, it's hot, warming, it's kind of stagnating, and it made me feel nice when I took it, but then I noticed the next day that I felt a little bit sluggish. Now, that's nothing, I'm sure, compared to some of the new strains that are out of the THC cannabis, but still, it's something to consider that if you are taking CBD and you notice that your digestive system starts to go off a bit, and you start to notice that you start to feel a bit more tired and headachy the next day, you may want to take a break from it. Now, let's look at the THC compounds, or the THC containing products, I should say, because this will also address many people's questions. A lot of questions came in about this. This is relevant, of course, only for those people who have access to it, which I will say, if there is one thing spiritual about this plant, it's that we are finally making it legal. That the prohibition about this plant is a clear indicator that we're not very spiritual as a culture, locking people up for using a beneficial plant. And that's the one thing that I think is a strong indicator that we are making a little bit of progress socially and culturally by legalizing this plant. And it's coming more and more, of course. And the most interesting thing about this, just to give you a very brief summation, is that there are so many strains, there are so many forms, and so many different strengths of extracts. Now, to sum this up very quickly, the main thing with cannabis is that it is very dose dependent, and you need some professional guidance from some practitioners who really know about this plant, because there are now so many kinds of extracts, everything from very highly diluted to very high concentration, and so many strains, so many different kinds of forms of it that it's available. And it can be really good if it's the right product at the right dose for the right person. But we should not think of it as a panacea for everybody. And again, it's very dose dependent. So a very small dose can be incredibly beneficial for relieving anxiety, but a little bit higher dose can actually cause anxiety. That's what we have to watch for. So, what's known now about the medical cannabis with the THC strains of the compounds in it? It is really good for seizures, especially in kids and children. It is very good for specific types of pain, especially in treatment of cancer. And it can also be very beneficial for anxiolytic and antidepressant purposes if it's the right form and the right dose. That's an extremely abbreviated version of that particular question, because at this point, there are many practitioners who are extremely well educated, and people come with serious illnesses. They are being treated for cancer, they're integrating natural medicine. And in order to use cannabis effectively, you really need to know quite a bit about it. And there are more practitioners who are licensed medical care people, naturopathic doctors, especially trained herbalists, even MDs are offering this now, that really know about the different kinds of preparations and are really applying it very effectively. So I'll turn it back to you. That's actually the short version of a very long answer.
Well, thank you. It's a fascinating topic that not many people are talking about, so I'm sure people really do appreciate your input. And for those of you who are just joining us, we're here with David Crow, learning about his upcoming course, Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution Intensive, which begins on Thursday, November 9th. And you can log on to plantsandevolutionintensive.com for all the details and to register. So let's get back to the questions here. This one here, it's rather complex. So give me a moment to read it here. This is from Raiza, who says, "I've recently been treated for cancer. I endured chemotherapy, several surgeries under anesthesia, and other nasty meds that can be linked to brain cell death. I'm off all the meds now. I currently suffer from memory loss, momentary lapses of forgetfulness, mostly short term, but even as basic as forgetting how to spell words or even forget to turn off the stove after cooking. What herbs can I take to help my brain heal and regenerate? I seem to be living in a haze, even though I'm eating very clean and as chemical free as possible. My vision and focus have also been dramatically affected. My attention span is also suffering, and concentration during tasks has become difficult. I feel like a geriatric stuck in a young woman's body. Aside from ginkgo and bacopa pills or tea, do you recommend any other herbs or medications or exercises, meditations that might help? And how would you prepare these herbs for maximum bioavailability?"
Well, do you have 6 months and 18 modules of time? That would cover a good extensive answer. Now, the reason that I wanted to include this is because it actually is several questions, and those several questions have been posed by many people in this webcast already. Many people are asking about decline of cognitive function and what to do about it. Many people are asking about treatment during chemo, treatment after cancer. Many of the things that are all included in this one question have been asked for by many people. Now, another reason that I wanted to include this question is not just because I will go through and answer all of these a step at a time, but because there's also an important principle of herbal medicine that I wanted to address here. And that is that you must approach the treatment of a complex multi-systemic condition such as this on many levels. Now, I know that you are describing a complex situation, and I'm sorry to hear about all of this and this history and everything that you have been through. But if we break it down, what we see is that according to Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, we're not talking about just the brain, we're talking about the liver, and we're talking about the kidneys, the adrenal system. We're talking about the endocrine system. We're talking about the neuroendocrine system. There's many systems that are involved here that must be rejuvenated. Now, taking something that is specifically for cognitive function is okay as a kind of symptomatic treatment. Taking Bacopa and taking ginkgo, these kind of things will be the first thing that people will think about when they're having cognitive function. But this is why I was saying we also have to think very holistically, because many times it's not just improving the cerebral circulation that's going to take care of everything, because there is undoubtedly a number of factors that must also be addressed. Now, this is one of the reasons why people frequently say, well, the herbs didn't work, because they took something that was supposed to do something, but it didn't do it. And that's because we have to look more deeply. And so in a case like this, we have to look at rehydrating and rejuvenating the body fluids. Body fluids are damaged by chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is like a heat toxin that burns the tissues. We have to look at any type of toxicity that built up in the liver. We have to look at the stress that went on the kidneys from those kind of medications. We look at every system. And then if you look at every system and you start to nourish, rejuvenate every system, then the likelihood of getting good results will dramatically increase. So let me give you just a few ideas about some of these things. First of all, I want to acknowledge that anesthesia will do this. Only anesthesia itself will create these kind of cognitive problems, and especially if it has been several times. Now, that can be supported very much with the cerebral circulatory enhancing herbs like the ginkgo, but you would also like to have the neuroprotective herbs. And you are taking one, the Bacopa. I will add one more, which is Gotu-kola. And Gotu-kola is milder and more systemically applicable for a lot of things. So Gotu-kola would be a major herb for you and for everybody who is expressing these kind of concerns. Then you would also like to watch for any potential adverse reactions of the ginkgo. Ginkgo can be potentially a blood thinning herb. This is another issue that we have to watch for, is it can be good for enhancing circulation to the brain, but if you are on any kind of blood thinning medications, you should stop the ginkgo, that's all. And we also see that there's a number of integrated therapies that you would like to start to bring in. Now, this is where I start to think very holistically and encourage people look into other things other than just herbs, actually. Shirodara. For those of you who don't know Shirodara, this is the warm oil cascade over the head that will put you into a very, very deeply relaxed state. Sesame oil, or even aromatic sesame oil. It's an Ayurvedic treatment that basically produces deep relaxation in the nervous system. And this is one of the things that is severely disturbed when people go through chemotherapy, radiation, and so forth. And it's also disturbed from the anesthesia. So what we look at then is how relaxed can you make the body? How hydrated can you make the body? How relaxed can you make the nervous system? How hydrated can you make the tissues? And this treatment of pouring warm oil over the head is incredible, actually, for hydrating the entire body. And then the Abhyanga, which many people know that term, warm oil application over the whole body, extremely hydrating, very supportive for the tissues, very, very calming and relaxing for the nervous system. So you want to bring in these kind of holistic kind of treatments. Another specific treatment, these are all things, by the way, that we study in this 6-month program. We just connect herbs to them and connect them to herbal treatments as well. And another example of this is called Nasya, Nasya. This is a type of treatment that uses herbs that are cooked in oil, such as sesame, and they are applied to the nostrils, one drop at a time. Nasya means medicated oil or medicine for the sinuses, but it also is used for treating the brain, classically in Ayurveda. And there's a number of preparations that are actually food for the brain. It's very interesting because these herbal preparations are cooked in oil, and oil preparations are lipid soluble across the blood-brain barrier, which means that herbs cooked in oil have tremendous potential for feeding the brain, rejuvenating neurological function and enhancing cognitive function. So this is another method that can be started relatively easily. You can find simple nasya preparations now through basic Ayurvedic herbal sources and so forth that are online. And these are things that you can start yourself, just at very low doses, 1 drop in the sinus each side every couple days. But then with further education, you can really learn how to add that in for a much stronger kind of treatment. So we also would like to strengthen not just the cerebral circulation for the brain, but we would also like to consider that there's a link between our cognitive function in the brain and our nervous system type of cognitive function and a deeper spiritual type of function, which is in the heart. And what's interesting is that if you take herbs to support the health of the heart, strengthen the heart muscle, it actually supports the cognitive function of the brain as well. And it's a very interesting study because the heart in Chinese medicine is the abode, the center of the Shen, the spirit. And the spirit is actually many aspects of our cognitive function. So hawthorn is a really good herb that is very nutritious. It strengthens the heart muscle, and that also supports cerebral circulation, but it also has a spiritual dimension to it that supports our consciousness as well. So that would be another one I would add to your pharmacy. What you'll see here is I'm building a small pharmacy for this one person who has multiple issues that they would like to address. And this is what I am trying to convey here is that you can build an individualized home pharmacy where the herbs serve you according to how you are feeling. That's one of the primary objectives of the course. I'm just going to go on a small tangent here for 30 seconds. Say that one of the main things that we want to accomplish is learning how to build a home pharmacy that addresses your personal needs and that you know how to use well enough that you can take the various herbs as you feel you need them. So some days you may feel that bacopa or ginkgo are a little bit too stimulating for the nervous function. You may want to think instead of gentle support for the heart muscle, and that's why I thought of that. So learning how to rotate the herbs is actually a primary objective according to your individual need. Let's look here a couple other things. We're going to talk about how to rejuvenate the entire body with herbs that are in the class of nutritive tonics and a special group of herbs that are known as adaptogens. A lot of people probably have heard that term. And their primary function can be described in another way, which is that they are neuroendocrine balancing. Now, many of the symptoms that were described here that are representative of what many people on the webcast are expressing are treated with this group of herbs primarily: adaptogenic herbs, neuroendocrine herbs, and nutritive tonics. Now, one of the most important nutritive tonics that will really feed the nervous system, and several people have said, they've used the key words here. I have adrenal burnout. I have, again, it's the nervous system is overworked. I'm not sleeping well. Adrenal exhaustion, that has come up many, many times. And so this is applicable to everybody who is concerned about that particular issue, what to do about this relative. They're trying to deal with total adrenal burnout. What do? Milky oat seed tincture is your first choice. And those of you who may have been in previous herb courses, you know that that's something I advocate. It's like the herb for our stressed out society. It is the number one starting point for the adrenal burnout, the exhausted nervous system, overstimulated sympathetic nervous system with accompanying adrenal burnout. Milky oat seed tincture. But any of the other herbs in the adaptogen category that have neuroendocrine balancing functions are also going to be considered. Those are going to be things like American ginseng, which is very, very nice. Don't use Chinese ginseng, the red hot type that gives you high blood pressure and heart palpitations. That's not what you want. The American ginseng, which is more popular in China than it is in America, will hydrate the fluids and feed the nervous system in the same way that the milky oat seed will. That's a really good combination, actually. So then we look at a few other very famous adaptogens, and I know that it's getting about time to wind down on this one question. Rhodiola, these types of things, maca, rhodiola, eleuthero ginseng, these types of things are really the main thing to think of in this case. Now, the symptom is decrease of focus, memory, cognitive decline, these kind of things. That's the main symptom. But the problem is really this interface between the nervous system and the endocrine system, and specifically the body needs food. It needs nourishing of the endocrine system. It needs nourishing of the nervous system. So along those lines, we also think of building the blood. And anybody who's gone through chemotherapy, radiation, blood deficiency is also going to be a primary problem. And blood deficiency is going to be one of the root causes of cognitive decline as well. So we look at the Chinese pharmacy for that. We see that there's a lot of things. A specific herb for building the blood is going to be Shao Wu. That's the Chinese name for it. It's a type of polygonum root. It's famous actually in Chinese medicine. Very easy to find now. Major ingredient of a lot of formulas for building the blood. And let me add one more thing you might not have thought of: bone broth. Some people may not be comfortable with that, but it is really good for this kind of deep exhaustion and deep depletion in the body. Many other things, strengthening the endocrine system. This will be the last thing I'm going to mention here because I know we need to move on. But strengthening the endocrine function, very important to consider ashwagandha. And that, as I mentioned, a major herb for fibromyalgia, and also a major herb for just building up general strength, especially for men. And for women, we think of the asparagus root. So I think I should wind it down. That's a long answer, but the reason I took some time is because it actually answers several dozen questions that came in as a starting point. Now, keep in mind that we have to go far beyond this herb is used in this condition. When it actually comes to treating the more complex conditions, we really need a balanced herbal program. But I hope you can understand now that if you address a number of systems and organs simultaneously, you're going to get superior results, and it's just much more satisfying. You're going to feel a lot better from herbal medicine. Then when you add the other kinds of treatments, it's going to get even better. So I hope that clarifies things. I'll go ahead and turn it back to you, Lisa, and see how we are on time and your continued introduction to the course.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. We have time for maybe one or two more questions, but before we take those, I do want to give a few details about the course. Again, it's called the Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution Intensive, and this is going to be, in case you can't tell, a truly information-packed 6-month journey under David's expert guidance, where you'll become initiated into a new and synergistic relationship with the plant kingdom and discover how to work with plants as multidimensional allies for your body, emotions, mind, and soul. And the 6-month course takes place on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time, starting Thursday, November 9th. And if you can't join us live, as David was saying, you won't miss the teachings. You'll get audio recordings, transcripts, all the course handouts, which will add up to hundreds of pages, almost a virtual textbook. You'll get that all on your course homepage. Also, we offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses. And because of the holiday, you get a full 3 weeks because of Thanksgiving until November 30th, in this case, to make sure that it's a good fit. And in addition, all participants are welcome to join a private Facebook community group so you can stay connected with one another. And everyone who registers receives the Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution Intensive Bonus Collection. First, you'll receive a 20% discount from David's store, Floracopia. But you're not required to buy your supplies through there, but it's a nice discount, good stuff. Next, you'll get an audio interview with David entitled Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution. Then you'll receive a video teaching with David called The Upsides and Downsides of Stimulants. And all course participants have access to consultation emails with David. And also, good news, we've added another fantastic extra bonus and extended the registration deadline for what was originally going to expire tonight. So now, when you register by midnight Pacific on Tuesday, October 30th, you'll receive 2 additional bonuses as opposed to one, which if you've got the emails, you've seen that there was one. First, you receive the video class with David entitled Natural Approaches to Dental Health. And you'll also receive the Plant Medicine Wisdom Collection. This is the full package of downloadable MP3s for all of the sessions from the summit. And this is valued at $247. The special multimedia package contains the full collection and recordings and transcripts from the Plant Medicine Summit from 2016. And this is hosted by David. The summit includes top ecological experts, groundbreaking health practitioners, and inspiring educators who share the secrets of nature's vast pharmacy. So before we go any further here, as you mentioned, we're getting a little low on time, but let me ask you real quick, what are you most looking forward to sharing in this upcoming course?
Well, for me, I think this is really important information for everybody to know. And this is one of the major reasons that I really enjoy teaching this course and why I think that we need this information more in our society is, first of all, the medicinal plants do some really crucial things physiologically that the prescription drugs don't. They give us nutrition. They give us concentrated forms of nutrition, and we can't really get well without nutrition. And they also help to detoxify. And we can't really get well without cleansing. And these 2 physiological functions are crucial for restoring our health and maintaining our health. And they are becoming increasingly crucial as the world becomes more toxic and the food chain becomes more degraded. Now, if we look at those 2 basic functions, we can see that there's not a single prescription drug that can do that. There's not a single prescription or over-the-counter medication that will give us nutrition. And we need the nutrition for healing. We need the nutrition for rebuilding our vitality and our immunity and counteracting inflammation and protecting the cells. A myriad things come from nutrition that are needed. And we can't find a single prescription drug that will detoxify the body. As a matter of fact, all the adverse reactions, side effects that come from all the prescription drugs are really because they disturb the nutritional status of the body and increase the toxic burden. So that's one of the most important reasons why we should have medicinal plants in our home. And we would also like to learn how to use them far in advance of any kind of problems, because if we use medicinal plants earlier in life, and we use them on an ongoing basis, and we really learn what they do, the best types of preparations, the best products that are available. These are really protective. These will really give us long-term benefits, as well as help us to restore health when we do have health problems. Now, this information applies to all ages. It applies to everybody in the family. And it applies to any kind of health condition, because really, even when people are older, they're on medications, they have complex conditions, there's still a lot of things that natural medicine can do to help you potentially reduce medications. That's a goal for a lot of people. Natural medicine can be very effective. It requires a higher level of clinical work and mindfulness. You can't just stop your medications without having somebody working with you closely. But over time, we can rejuvenate the body so that we need less allopathic intervention. And that's one of the long-term goals, is to prevent getting into that situation as much as possible in the first place. But if we do find ourselves in that situation, the herbs can still help us. And even if we don't have anything wrong with us, the herbs can still help us anyway. So one of the main objectives and one of the main reasons that I really enjoy teaching this is because this is a form of medical empowerment. And it's not just medical empowerment because if we know how to take care of ourselves and keep ourselves strong, it's also a kind of economic empowerment because really it's going to keep us out of the medical system, which can become very costly very quickly. And a lot of people know that. And a lot of people have already been through that. And now they're looking for alternatives. That's why there's this explosion in interest in natural medicine, is that people are looking for natural alternatives. So this information is very empowering medically, which is also empowering politically and economically. And it is something that the more you know, the more educated you are, the more you have control over your health to a very high degree. And the more resources you have and the more alternatives you have. Keep in mind, there's a lot of people that don't know about these resources yet, don't know about this level of medicine, don't know that it's even there, don't know the possibilities that it has, the potential it has. And for those people, really the only medicine that's there is allopathic medicine. And that's very limited because if you look at it, allopathic medicine, for the most part, is overused and in many cases, very unnecessary. It has a very strong place. People do need it. And a lot of times it's just simply overused and unnecessary. There's so many other alternatives. So this is what I really look forward to conveying. And this is not just information for what you can do today, it's information for what you can do 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what you can do for your kids and what they can do. We need to basically bring back this information back into our families. And now we have the ability to do it at a completely new level, a kind of golden age of herbal medicine, I like to say, because we have access now to all the herbal traditions from all over the world instantly available online and education about what to do with them. So it's really a good opportunity to learn more about how to take care of ourselves. It will be good for the rest of our lives, really.
Wow. This is, as usual, David, this has just been an amazing conversation, a fantastic hour. I want to thank our viewers for being with us today and for all of your really wonderful questions. Obviously, there were more than we could get to, but David covered as many as he could. Once again, Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution Intensive starts Thursday, November 9th. And again, you can visit plantsandevolutionintensive.com to learn more and to register. So before we go, David, do you have any final words for our listeners?
Well, I would just like to express again my gratitude for everybody who is watching this because this is a very important subject. One of the things that we don't have time to go into, but which we delve into in some of the other courses and touch on a bit in this intensive, is that this information is not just good for us. This information is good for the earth. Using medicinal plants is very healing ecologically. It's healing for all the people who are growing these medicinal plants. It's economically uplifting, supporting a lot of people around the world, preserving some of the endangered environmental areas through sustainable agroforestry. It's a big subject, but if you really look at it, herbal medicine really goes into every aspect of healing the most important things that we are facing crises with now in the world. And so if we become part of herbal medicine, we're actually becoming part of a very important force for healing that's much more than just about our individual health. It's about environmental health, ecological health, and sustainability, plant-based, sustainable economic well-being, preservation of traditional ethnobotanical wisdom, indigenous cultures. It goes on and on. But it's a very big subject, but we don't even have to know that, really. All we need to know is that if we are using the medicinal plants, we are using the pranic intelligence of nature. We're using the life force that is in the plants, and that's the primary source of healing that humans have always relied on. And this is biocompatible. This is a kind of nutrition that we need on all levels. And so we're using a kind of deep, ancient life force that the plants contain that is actually part of all of the biosphere. And so when we consume the plants, we're actually consuming a highly concentrated form of life force that's supporting our own life force. And so just to wrap it up, I just want to say thank you for being so interested in this profound and very important subject. And thank you for joining us. And Lisa, thank you again for hosting this.
Well, thank you again, David. And once again, thank you to everyone who joined us today. On behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you well and look forward to having you on this course or perhaps another one in the future. Have a great night, everyone.